my name is Elaina and today I'm showing you how to make pasta using King Arthur pasta flour and the recipe that's on the back. That makes about a pound of pasta for 5 to 7 people. And I'm gonna be using a KitchenAid mixer with obviously the bowl and then pasta attachments. Obviously you don't need to make it that way. You don't need attachments to make pasta, but let's get started.
So as I started to mix it, the flour got stuck on the sides of the bowl, so I just took a spatula and I scraped it down into the bowl and then restarted it and let it keep going until it was fully combined. After the dough has been combined, I spread pasta flour on the counter to prevent it from sticking, and I also put pasta flour on my hands so that way I could knead the dough without it sticking to my hands. And here I'm just taking the dough out of the bowl and I'm kneading with the palms of my hands. Here is where I needed a little bit more flour, and wow, oh my gosh, it's raining flour. That was just my dad sprinkling some more for me so it wouldn't stick as much. And here is where I start to form it into a ball so that I can wrap it with saran wrap. And then I put it in the oven with not on or anything, just with the lamp on, and I just sit it there to rest for 30 minutes. Here is where I put on the first pasta attachment while the dough is resting in the oven. And this one is just to flatten the dough, and it's got about 5 or 6 different settings on it depending on how thin or thick you want your pasta. I will say though, once you do cook it, it does get thicker, so I tried to make mine thin but not way too thin, like paper thin. And I also started to boil a lot of water. I mean, I was making a lot of pasta, so I had to boil a lot of water in this pot with a colander in it so I can easily strain the water when I need to. Here it came to a boil, and this was about when my dough was ready. After about 30 minutes, my dough was finally done resting, and I began to flour my surface and my hands to prevent the dough from sticking again. And I just used a bread tool to cut the dough in half so that was easier to manage. And here's where I started to flatten out the dough enough that it could go through the first machine. And don't forget to flour your rolling pin because that's something I clearly forgot to do. This is how thick I made mine for reference. And I turned on the machine to the lowest setting, and then I had it set to 1, which is the thicker part of the process, and I slowly ran it through the machine. And you want to make sure the dough stays up as much as possible to get it nice flat. I wanted my noodles to be about this length, so then I changed it to 2 and ran it through once again, and then that's when it started to get really long, so I had to eventually cut it in half. And I just repeated this process until I was happy with my thickness, and I ended about 4 or 5-ish. Very important step that I forgot to mention was to flour your dough between each stage and each time you run it through the roller, because otherwise it will stick. And I found this out the hard way a couple times. After I got my desired thickness for the dough, I put on the second attachment that actually makes the noodles. I decided to use the linguine style, and I also used a little bit of flour on top of the dough, and I turned it on the lowest setting again, and I made sure to keep the dough as straight as I could, and I put my hand underneath to catch the noodles. You'll get a few small pieces, and I just didn't use those, but it turned out really good and super pretty, and it'll get caught. And then I put it straight into the water and let it boil for about 4 minutes. I set the timer using my microwave, and I pushed down the noodles using a spoon. To make sure they boiled evenly. This was after I put in a couple more batches. Here I am just repeating the process a couple more times with the rest of my dough. And after the 4 minutes were up, I used a spoon to spoon out the noodles into a strainer. I know I could have used my colander, but I ended up making more pasta, so I needed the hot water still. And I just grabbed all the noodles and put them into a strainer. Thank you for your help, Dad. I would not have been able to do this by myself. And then I went over to the sink and I ran cold water through the noodles and kind of just made sure to shake them all out. And then I just let them sit over a bowl to let it drain naturally by itself. And after some time, I emptied the bowl and I just poured the noodles right in there. And there you have it. Those are how to make homemade pasta. And here's the dinner we had with it. So good.